when was the book of Daniel written? And I want to answer this question because it is very important. It has been a topic of contention, a topic of argument all these years regarding the authorship and the dating of the book of Daniel. And the book of Daniel, the dating is significant because the dating will decide if Daniel is historical or prophetic. And that will have an impact on our faith. Because if the foundation is faulty, the building is going to fall. We've been talking about how the Bible has been proven with historical facts. But if Daniel was written after the history, then definitely there will be nothing much to talk about prophetic but historical. And that was Peter's question. So we are going to address this question first, the book of Daniel, and it is about dating Daniel. The book of Genesis, Daniel, and Revelation are the most attacked books of the Bible. Especially Daniel, because Daniel somehow is nowhere, in the sense that Masoretic text, the Hebrew Bible, puts Daniel where? In writings or Ketuvim. He's not considered a prophet as far as the Hebrew Bible is concerned. But as far as the Christian Bible, which follows the Greek Septuagint, Daniel is grouped under the major prophets. So there is also this little bit of uncertainty there. First, we go to the authorship of Daniel. Who do you think wrote the book of Daniel? Anybody?
Daniel.
Daniel, okay. Right. Daniel wrote the book of Daniel. That is the most common traditional view of Daniel writing the book of Daniel. Now, how do we prove that actually Daniel wrote the book of Daniel?
There are certain verses that says, I, Daniel.
Yes.
Daniel 9, yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you, May. In the sense that from chapter 1 to chapter 6 is basically narrative. Is a second, as a third person, is like somebody writing about Daniel. But chapter 7 onwards, chapter 7, chapter 8, especially chapter 8 verse 1, already I, Daniel. Okay, I, Daniel. Chapter 9 verse 2, I, Daniel. Chapter 10 verse 2, chapter 12 verse 5, I, Daniel. Okay, so in that case, they assume that Daniel actually wrote this, but he may not necessarily have written the book itself, but it was compiled. It would have been inscribed and compiled. He might have dictated it, he might have written it, because all the other prophets and Bible writers also the same thing, including Paul, had people to write it for him, especially when he's getting too old to even be able to read the words that he's written. Dating Daniel. Okay. Two types of theories. One theory is that Daniel was written 6th century BC. Another theory was that Daniel was written 2nd century BC. You see, skeptics criticize the prophecies of Daniel, especially Daniel 11. Why? Because Daniel 11 is so precise in its historical alignment, so precise that they cannot believe it. So they claim that it must have been written after all these things happened. After. That means it would have happened like in the 2nd century. After the whole thing happened, then somebody wrote it down to become so accurate. Traditionally, they believe that it would have been written in the 6th century. So these are some of the facts that traditionalists will prove that Daniel was written in the 6th century. That here it says 530. Manuscripts of the book of Daniel was discovered in as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves of Qumran in 1947. We went through that before when we first started the book of Daniel. I was telling that they found about 9 manuscripts. That means manuscripts are rewritten scrolls. Because those days they don't have photocopy machines, they don't have our soft virtual copies. So if they wanted to preserve manuscripts or scrolls, what did they have to do? They have to write it all over again and write it all over again. So they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found about 9 manuscripts of the book of Daniel as it is in one of those pots that they found in the caves of Qumran, and they dated those scrolls to be 165 BC. Means that the book of Daniel must have been written earlier, because manuscripts is not original. So then you say, yeah, then it would have been written earlier, maybe 200 BC, 300 BC. Then you have this Septuagint. Septuagint is a Hebrew Bible or Hebrew scriptures translated into Greek. If the book of Daniel had been written during the 200 BC, it would have been originally written in Greek, because by the time that May was saying, Alexander wanted to Hellenize the whole region. Hellenize means make it Greek, make them speak Greek, and he was successful because most of the people in the regions were speaking Greek and writing Greek already. So if Daniel was written in the 200 BC, it would have been written in the Greek language. But as we know from our classes, Daniel was written in which language? Can anybody tell me?
Hebrew and Aramaic.
Yes, yep, thank you very much. First few chapters in Aramaic, after that in Hebrew. So this is an argument that it couldn't have been written in the 200 BC. Then you have this historian, Jewish historian Josephus. He lived around 300 over BC. And if you read the writings of Josephus, he would have accounted for the fact that when Alexander the Great wanted to invade Jerusalem in the 300 BC, the priest showed him the book of Daniel. I believe it was Celine who mentioned that in one of our classes, is that Alexander the Great himself was shown the book of Daniel in 300 BC. So Josephus wrote about that. So in other words, Daniel couldn't have been written later, but earlier. So the Jewish tradition has it that Daniel was written about 450 BC, around there. But as we look back in the book of Ezekiel, we have studied the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel mentions Daniel by name because Daniel was his contemporary. Of course, Ezekiel was taken to the rivers of Babylon. Daniel was taken to the palace of King of Nebuchadnezzar. But they are contemporaries. Historians dated Ezekiel's writings to be about 500 over BC because remember, Ezekiel was exiled and he didn't survive the exile. He died about age 30. So he died in Babylon. So he wrote the book there and then. So these are some of the facts that may show us that actually, when was Daniel written? Process of elimination couldn't have been written in 100 BC, couldn't have been written 200 BC because of argument, couldn't have been written 300 BC because it was written earlier and then shown to Alexander the Great. So it has to be between 500 and 300. So whatever it is, if the book of Daniel had been written after the historical happenings and events, then Daniel chapter 11 would not be so complicated, isn't it? Because they would have named the king of the north, the king of the south, the king of the north, the king of the south, the king of the north, the king of the south, because they already have the names. But the fact is that Daniel chapter 11 does not name the kings or the events. So that, in a way, will just show to us that actually the book of Daniel was written much earlier and it is actually prophetic and not historical. It's only now that we are trying to align history together with the predicted prophecies. They call it the predicted prophecies. So is Daniel prophetic or historical? What do you think? Yeah, well,
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Amen. It's prophetic.
Yeah. So now the question is, if Daniel is indeed prophetic and everything is so well planned by God, he knows everything from the beginning to the end, what about our lives? Is our life predestined by God? Team Alex composes of Pretty Ladies. Of course, there's a young man, Uncle Theo, but I can't find a picture of him. And of course, Brother Alex with his new hairstyle, is the question posed to you. Is our life predestined by God, or is our life destined by our free will?
My answer is the second part. Our life is destined by our free will. Sister May asked to provide your thoughts and biblical answer. Well, if you look at Adam, he was given a choice to follow God or follow wife. He decided to follow wife. So goes with the Israelites. They God say follow me, and they follow halfway, and then they follow themselves and their own thoughts and their own ways. And that's why a lot of things happen. God didn't want them to have king, and they said they want a king. So my answer will be free choice. God gave us choice, allow us to.
Okay, so you are supporting your argument by examples from the Bible?
Yeah.
That'd be right. Okay. Anybody else in your team, Angela, or have anything to say?
I just want to share my thought. I think we are predestined by God. If you look at Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4 and 5. Just pray for you all. Verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nation. It means God is making decision for us. Before you're born, He already prepared what you want to do with your life already. My opinion is we are predestined by God. It means God decides what to do with us.
So you have the same thinking and the theory as John Calvin, one of the reformists. John Calvin is one of those. John Calvin is a contemporary of Martin Luther. Even those days, even during the reformist time, they were also having opposing views of this issue of predestination.
Okay, I don't agree that with Uncle Teo, but no, but we have to also take into account consideration that God is omniscient. That means He knows everything. Okay, so meaning that He would know that whether I would be saved at the end of the day. All right, that's what I at the end of the day. But again, He has already He has. When you say predestined, like for the Israelites, actually is congregation predestination for these people. It's not individual. All right. God said that I have this plan for you. This is going to happen to you if you obey me. But it's when it comes to individual, God says that you have to decide individually. Romans 8, verse 28 to 30. We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, who are called according to His purpose. For those He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, so that He would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those He predestined, He also called. And those He called, He also justified. And those He justified, He also glorified. This one is more, I think, it's like ultimately, he predestined, meaning that He called us, He said that, you believe in me and, you will be saved, But again, it's congregational. It's not like, okay, I decide, Angela, at the end, then why are we here? Why are we here? If God predestined, then I'll let it be. At the end of the day, God decides whether I will be saved or not. Then I don't have to, try to walk with Him. Why would I? Because at the end of the day, if, I realize I walk with Him, suddenly God decides,
you're not going to be
saved, then, so it doesn't make sense that your life is predestined. All right. Okay. That's my takeaway here.
So you're saying that God's predestined utama bikin, but our lives is not predestined.
No, our life definitely.
Because you say congregation, right? So congregation. Yes. So that means God has predetermined how, where, what is the direction of utama bikin, or what is the final destiny of utama bikin, but not Angela Quat or Maybe.
Exactly. It's just like the Israelites. Okay, just like the Israelites, how He has made promises to them, and you know, he very easy. I mean, he just said that if you obey me, you know, God predestined what's going to happen already. But again, not everyone was saved.
I just want to go back to Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5, the one that Uncle Theo has mentioned, because it is very important for us to study in context rather than just take a verse. And a lot of people have taken this verse to view it as in general all of us. But who is God talking to in Jeremiah 1 verse 5?
Jeremiah.
Yes. He is talking specifically to Jeremiah. Okay? The Lord said to me, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I chose you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you to be a prophet to the nations. We need to be very, very careful how we read this verse. And what context is this verse all about? Because if we pluck this verse out and apply it to us, then we may get into a bit of a trouble because God didn't call us to be prophet. So we also have to be very careful with this verse. But you know, you can argue that this is predestination for Jeremiah, means that he does predestine people's individual lives of people, not congregation.
Okay, I would define predestination as like we are just like robots. You know,
Okay.
it means that we only be like robots, because that when Satan and his angels revolted against God, God could have forced them to love him, but he gave them the freedom of choice to choose, revoke him, instead of like, you know, forcing them to love him. And similarly, when God allowed Satan to deceive Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, he has actually provided an opportunity for them to choose Satan's will or Jesus' will. I mean, in our context, it's like if we are in the position of like being tempted by Satan, God has actually provided us an opportunity for us to choose whether we want to go to Satan's will or we want to go to Jesus Christ.
That you are both free will and predestination.
Yes,
God has. Yeah.
Okay, because I think God has predestined his plan of salvation. That through Jesus Christ, for all those who accept him, we will be saved. So it is God who draws the persons in, and it is like actually we require God's call to break the power of sin, deception in a person's life, so that a person can accept him.
I know that when we receive our Lord Jesus Christ, he died for our sins on the cross. So we believe in him. He gave us the right to become children of God. That's John 1:12, right? So that means we are saved. And in order to, for us to be saved as children of God, we still have to live godly life. So that at the end of the day, Jesus will come and look at you. He will say, you know, well done, my faithful servants. And he will not say, oh, I don't know you. You know what I mean?
Amen. Yeah. And the godly life has nothing to do with whether I wear makeup or the way I dress, or whether I'm a vegetarian, or whether I listen to Hillsong or hymns. You go back and read Matthew 25, you will know what Jesus means. And a lot of times the church has taught us wrongly about salvation and about the perfection, the word perfection. When Jesus says, be perfect just as the Father in heaven is perfect. You go back and read and you will understand what Jesus is talking all about. This kind of profound question needs the advice from the anointed pastor of the Tamar Beacon. So I'd like to hear the pastor say something about this question.
I think number one, remember what I've taught you, where does the law comes from? Does it come from the Apostle Paul or does it come from the Torah?
Torah.
Of course, from the Torah. Can Paul make up something that does not exist in the Torah?
Cannot.
Cannot. No. He cannot on his own say, now there is predestination. I'm starting a new theory called predestination. So you will find this word predestination or predestined or destined, it's pronounced a parosis or something like that, only 8 times in the entire Bible. once in the book of prophet, in the book of Isaiah, 7 times in the New Testament, once in the book of Luke, written by Luke, and 6 times written by the troublemaker Paul. And when Paul writes, everybody gets confused because he used the word predestined very often. If you look at the first time predestined is mentioned, it is in Isaiah 65 verse 12. And he basically says this, I will destine you for the sword. In other words, God is going to kill those Israelites. The whole of chapter 5, God was scolding the Israelites, you bad guys, you profane my worship, you worship idols, now I predestined to kill you. The word is best translated as I number to kill you or I count to kill you. It's not so much predestination that all of you are doomed to die from the day you begin. It is because of the bad things that you did, now I'm going to kill you. That's what it means in Isaiah. And that's about the same thing also in the entire New Testament written by Paul. Foreknowledge, that means God knows everything, and predestination are 2 different things. Argument, foreknowledge and predestination. In all of Paul's writings, it's basically saying something like this. I've got no time to go through all the 6 verses with you. That because I have foreknowledge of your bad things, I'm going to kill you. Or because I have foreknowledge of your good things, I've chosen you to be my apostle.
Daniel chapter 11, just a recap, the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 2 was the dream. And then after that, it gives a little bit more information, Daniel chapter 7. And then onwards to Daniel chapter 8. And we are now, like Inspector Clouseau, we are now really, really focusing on that little horn and the 4 kingdoms that was actually mentioned in Daniel chapter 8. And now we are going into Daniel chapter 11. And we did a little bit about that last week, wonderfully, because we now have confirmed that Daniel is prophetic. But alignment with history is so amazing. It's so amazing in Daniel chapter 11 itself. We have finished up to about here. Here, let me just enlarge it. We finish up to verse 17 in chapter 11, verse to the alliance of Egypt, whereby she marries an Egyptian. That's where you will get Cleopatra, you know, the famous Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. The famous one is, I believe, Cleopatra number 3. She becomes the last pharaoh of Egypt. And we do know a little bit about her history with Mark Antony and Julius Caesar. So here we have, it's just basically this. Verse 5 or verse 3 onwards, all the way to verse 17 is a conflict. All right, it's continuous conflict, south, north, north, south, south, north, north, south. And who is caught in middle? In the middle of the map, we can see that it's Israel itself. It's God's people. That's why God takes such an interest, and God is telling Daniel first what is going to happen to your people, and tells him in such precise details. But of course, no names mentioned. Now, historically, as historicists, we can go back and we can do the naming and the event alignment. Today, we are going to go into Daniel chapter 21. Describe this new king. Okay, we'll do it quickly because we only have about 15 minutes left. But why I want to dwell on this new king? Because this new king is very, very pertinent to the history of the Jewish nation at that time. Okay, and this is the king that has already been mentioned in Daniel chapter 8, which is basically the little horn that grows big. So we are going to introduce him today first, and after that, next week will be the intriguing events. Okay, that is going to be culminated by the war of the Maccabees. Okay, pass to Tim May now.
Verse 21, the next to come to power will be a despicable man who is not in line for royal succession. He will slip in when least expected and take over the kingdom by flattery and intrigue. Same goes with this new king. Nobody expected that he will be the next king. It's like he crawling slowly and then boom, here I am. Okay, and then well, you can see that in Daniel chapter 11, 21. So we move on. He's not the legitimate king. All right. And then his flattery and interview and stir up his power. It's like he's doing everything's like all in sudden. Nobody expected him at all. This guy is already mentioned earlier in Daniel chapter 8. So I was like, I asked my team member, is it related to the little horn or the other horn and things like that? So let's find out in this discovery class. So I discovered, yeah, there's interconnectivity between chapter 8 to chapter 11.
We think the horn is referring to Antiochus Epiphanes because the description about him being wicked and also the part where he did not succeed, royal honors will not be given to him because, yeah, it was not actually given to him but he seized it by himself, and the rest of the other verses describes him, describes closest to him.
Okay. Good observation. All right. Remember, we have already spoken about this guy in Daniel chapter 8. The little horn that grows big and is going to pull out the stars from heaven. And we also concluded that Daniel chapter 7, the horn, and Daniel chapter 8, the horn is different. Okay, I know it may cause some disagreement in some of the typical Adventist mind, but yeah, if we do, what we are doing here is we are doing Bible exegesis. So we concluded earlier that Daniel chapter 7, the horn, and this one, because my timeline is very different. How did this guy come into power? Just now, like Rose says, backdoor government, for sure it was. Because Antiochus IV was not meant to take the throne. When Antiochus III was murdered, you can see the right-hand side, Seleucus IV Philopater, that was his brother. His older brother took the throne. So Antiochus IV was actually held hostage in Rome. By this time, understand that in the 2nd century, Rome had already become quite a strong power. So Seleucus IV was holding on to the throne. However, his finance minister, Heliodorus, assassinates him to try to usurp power. That Seleucus IV was killed. So Antiochus IV was somewhere in Rome, Cyprus somewhere. When he heard the news, quickly he started to plot to come back. And because Seleucus IV was dead, Antiochus murdered Heliodorus, and naturally, the infant son of Seleucus IV, which is Antiochus, was supposed to take over. So the uncle nicely said what? I be co-regent with my nephew. That's how, because of that, that's why the Bible says it actually is not supposed to be his rightful place, but he comes and seizes the kingdom as well. So now Antiochus IV gets onto the throne, and he is now the king. Now, do you know that Antiochus IV is Antiochus Epiphanes? Epiphanes is a name given by himself. He put it there because Epiphanes stands for God manifest. You can understand what kind of person he was. And of course, the Jews didn't like him. The Jews call him Antiochus Epiphanes, the mad one. Just now, Alinda was talking about it. If we read verse 21, 22, 23, it's all about him usurping the power of entering into alliance. He behaves treacherously. He will ascend to power with only a small force. In terms of prosperity, he does spread on. And after that, verse 25, he is now going to come down south to go against the king of the south, which is Ptolemy V, which is his nephew. Wow, a very complicated family. Do you remember Cleopatra I was given by the king of the north to the king of the south to marry into the family? That was Antiochus IV's sister. So married to Ptolemy V. So now Ptolemy VI is his nephew. So he's coming against his nephew. He's going to wage war, but the king of the south is not going to prevail against him. So all those who share the king's fine food, that means the king of the south, his own people are going to rebel against him or going to betray him, and many will be killed. So here you have this thing going back and forth because they are all basically wanting power. But at the end of the day, the king of the north will go back because he doesn't succeed, because Ptolemy the 6 and the 7 will come against him. So there you go. There's another king of the north, king of the south. You've been hearing so much about it. But this Antiochus the 4th is going to appear again next week. And next week is important because it's related to the Israelites. It's related to the Jewish people, whereby he is going to desecrate the temple of God and set up the abomination of desolation. This word is going to come up again next week. Okay, so we have to finish already. So in summary, here is at the top. From 18 onwards, Antiochus the Great is Antiochus III. Then Seleucus IV is Antiochus the 4th brother. Antiochus IV Epiphanes is the one that did the backdoor government to become the king. And he will be basically the little horn that's going to wage war in the southern kingdom. And if he doesn't succeed, then he will come back and turn on Israel. To leave you with this, another confusing verse from Paul, but I believe this is what Sister Cindy was trying to say. Ephesians 1, verse 4 to 5. For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. It means God chose us. His purpose for us was to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us to be adopted as his sons through Jesus Christ, in accordance with his pleasure. So if you want to talk about predestination, God only predestined us for one thing. That is to be adopted as his sons and daughters through Jesus